John Cooper, welcome to Washington Times Higher Ground. Excited to have you on today to talk about your new book. We're going to go there in a second, but I have to ask you, and I love kind of quizzing people on this and throwing it out to them. If you could use one word only to describe culture right now, what would it be?
Ooh, chaos.
That's a good one.
That's it.
Chaos.
Chaos, baby.
That's it. That summarizes it.
I think everybody agrees. Everybody watching is like, yep, that's it.
That is, I mean, it is. It's a simple word, but it sums it up. And I mean, you talk about this a lot on your podcast, Cooper Stuff. You obviously have a new book, Wimpy, Weak, and Woke, where you talk about these subjects. But why do you think, right? Because if you go back 5 years, 10 years, even 3 years, I think some of the conversations we're having, people would have said, that's not going to happen. Like, there's no way that's going to happen. And yet here we are. Why do you think things devolved so quickly?
Man, so good. So much to answer with that. I think what it has to come down to is our beliefs about truth. And I know people, listening, reading are going to have very different ideas maybe of what is ultimate truth. But Western civilization is built upon a premise that there is such a thing as reality. You can touch it, you can feel it. Me and you both look out, the same sky and go, yep, that sky's blue. We see what we see and we go, yeah, that 2 + 2 is 4. We've known that. So we have, enlightenment values going into that. Of course, science and whatnot that came from the medieval period, from the church believing that God created a world that is real and that has laws to it. And so creation works in a certain way. And no matter what you do, you can't actually change that. There's an order to the world. So if we can kind of look into it and find out the mysteries of this world that we live in the medieval period, they thought, hey, that will be a way to glorify God. So now, of course, people have this idea that it's either science or God, and you have to choose one or the other, and they're at war with each other. But in reality, science was birthed from the medieval time when the church wanted to glorify God by figuring out how his cosmos worked. Well, what has happened in America? Well, actually, let me rewind. America is founded on that. So whether you're a Christian, a Jew, or atheist, everybody generally used to agree that America was founded on these principles of absolute truth. We really are a product of Reformation, and the principles that came from the Reformation, and then of course Enlightenment and individual liberties and all these wonderful things, and a moral code based on Judeo-Christian ethics. You don't have to be a Christian to agree that those ethics built a really amazing country, not just a country, a civilization. And it created the most prosperous, most free, and did the most good in the world civilization that's ever existed in the history of mankind. All that has been challenged. Truth has been challenged into saying there really is nothing that's absolutely true. And a lot of us, and a lot of people way before me, were saying, if you go down this road of postmodernism and saying there is no such thing as absolute morality and absolute truth, it will lead to the destruction of all of society. And everybody kept saying, you're being alarmist. That would never happen. And here we are in 2023. And if I go on X, which we used to call Twitter, and I, well, no, let's not say X because that's different now, but let's just rewind 1 year ago before Musk took it over. And you go on Twitter and say, no, a man cannot have a baby, you'll be kicked off of that platform.
Yeah, you're done. You're done.
Thinking
that's it.
Done, brother. So that's where we're at now, because if there is no truth, then yes, a man can get pregnant. And if there is no absolute morality, then yes, men should be able to compete in women's sports for the Olympics and all sorts of other things, if there is no such thing as truth. And I think that's what's led us here. And I think, if I could say one more thing, that the church in America has been so pathetic and so impotent. We have just decided that it would be more Christian to let the devolution and destruction of society occur in the name of winsomeness and the name of niceness, because we were too just dumb and too stupid and ignorant to realize that actually it was this book that we claim we believe in, called the Bible, that gave us the country that we have. And we thought, well, but all those principles will remain whether we whether we fight for it or not, it'll remain. We'll never get to a place when people actually call, murdering somebody positive, or we'll never get to a place where somebody says that abortion is actually an act of love. And they were wrong. That all of that is happening now, and I think the church let it happen.
It's so interesting, and I don't know that I've asked you this before, but as an entertainer, right, as somebody who's creating content, putting it out there, a lot of people are saying, well, how did it happen? Like, how did the church go down the same road as the culture? And one of the culprits that often does come up, and obviously it's always on the person, right? It's on the people. We make the decisions of what we watch and how much time we devote to scripture versus, I don't know, watching TV or movies. But how much do you think Hollywood and media have played a role in really shaping and reshaping what people believe about all of these issues?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's no question that that is happening because you're either going to kind of reject the culture or it will subtly change your mind about things. That's just how it goes. And I think that so I named this book Wimpy, Weak, and Woke. I'll tell you what the weak aspect is. The weak aspect is that we just don't study philosophy. We don't study political philosophy. And it has caused us to be so weak mentally that we just thought everybody in general is going to agree on what is right and wrong. And there's nothing more incorrect than that. All you got to do is look around what's happening in the world right now. You look at China. China, their government thinks that it's right to, just abuse and oppress all of their own people, right? To not give them freedom. You see, it was communist countries all throughout history. Look at what excuse me, what China is doing. Like today, over 2 million Uyghur Muslims in captivity. Well, they think that's right. Well, look at America today. The number one cause of death in this country. I mean, you got to remember that all throughout history, I know I'm rambling here, all throughout history, most people on this planet have died from some sort of starvation. Some sort of, hey, there's just not enough food and we don't have enough nutrients and we don't know what we're going to, famines. Well, in America, people don't die from starvation anymore. No, no, no. In America, our number one cause of death is the willful killing of the innocent, of the unborn. So, number one cause of death is abortion in this country and in the West, actually, in the whole Western civilization, the most civilized civilization in all history. We just kill our own people in the name of reproductive justice. So we have become so philosophically weak that we just thought, it'll be fine. And I think that in Christianity, we just thought that culture would be neutral. We could all watch TV. Hey, we all have grace. We can watch TV. We can do everybody do their own thing, and you do what's right for you. And we don't want to look like the mean people to culture. We're tired of looking like the mean people and the quote unquote religious right, the moral majority. We're screaming at people. We're telling people they're going to hell. We're screaming about immorality. Nobody wants to be the dad in Footloose, all right? So we all just decided like we don't want to be those people. We're going to be the people that just preach love and light and kindness. And so guess what happens? I mean, now today, you have people who claim to be Christians. One comes to mind, which is David French comes to mind, who actually vocally sometimes support extremely immoral, unchristian things under a banner of liberty, which is a real misunderstanding, I think, of what liberty is. And so we have to go back to what this country was founded on, the principles of this country, to understand what America actually was. I believe that the future of America needs to be found in our past, not in some sort of grandiose utopian progressive, future.
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is we've become wimpy, weak, and woke. Like that's
Woo!
what it sounds like you're
You know
saying.
we
So
have.
yeah,
You know we
I've
have.
got, I've got to, I've got to ask you about this title because this is a title that's going to grab attention, right? And so you've been working on this book for a while, and now that it's out, I think to myself, where was John when this title came to him? What, like, were you in a boardroom? Were you like eating cereal? Were you working out? Like, where when it just clicked? Like, this is going to be the title for this book.
Yeah. I'd already started writing it before I had the title. I'd kind of written a lot of it. Some of it I didn't use because I was just ranting. I was just ranting because it's a little hard not to just be shocked and angry at how trashy our culture, how the filth of this culture, and how broken down our politics is, and how impotent the church is to see Christians. I mean, like, for instance, if I went into just name a church in America today, I'm not even talking about progressive churches, all right, or super liberal churches. I'm not talking about what you might call the Christian left. If I went into a standard evangelical church today and I said, hey, you Christian sitting in the pew, man or woman, you need to stop pornography now. Never look at it again for the rest of your life. People would be like, whoa, why are you so harsh? That is so mean to say. We're not about the law, we're about grace. Like, they don't understand that not only is would Jesus be against pornography today, the founding fathers would be against pornography today. So I
Well,
think
it's just evil. I mean, every part of it is evil, right? And I
every
think,
part.
can I just say this because, when I look at where we are right now, there's such a justification for every emotion that people have, including pornography, right? It's like anything you feel, everybody has to sign on and say, this is a great thing. And if you're critiqued at all for it or called out for it more appropriately, it's the end of the world. And that's just not what we're called to do as, I'm a Christian, and so are you as Christians, but also as human beings. How is that a healthy place for any individual or culture to be?
It's ridiculous. I mean, but if you take out absolute truth and absolute morality, you gotta fill it with something. So what, like what causes us not to have just pure moral anarchy? Somebody has to say, "Well, actually, I do think this is wrong." And you say, "Why? Why do you think that's wrong?" And basically what it comes down to is their emotions. It just feels wrong to me. Why are you so angry about that? I just feels right to me. And everything in me says that can't be right. And you're being led by emotion. That's why I call it wimpy, weak, and woke. We're wimpy because we refuse to say things that are true. Why? Because we know we're going to get canceled for it. You're going to get kicked off of Twitter. You're going to lose I had a podcast a few months ago about abortion. And on YouTube, they're putting disclaimers all over my YouTube saying, some people will say that the earth is flat. I was like, what? And they're saying that those people, that is, you have this big disclaimer, and they're saying, because I am saying that abortion is the taking of life, they're saying, well, that's not exactly true. And so they have disclaimers all over on YouTube, demonetize me on YouTube. Um, Basically, we are weak because we know, we're wimpy because we know that the world isn't going to like us when we say things that are blatantly true, but we have to say them. We've lost our backbone. We are weak because we don't study anything. We don't even understand philosophy. We don't even understand why we think is something right or wrong. And I think that goes doubly for the church. And we are woke. This obsession with social justice through I call it social justice through a lens of neo-Marxism. Because people sometimes go, well, what is woke? That just means caring for the poor. No, it doesn't. Here's how I define woke. Woke is PC culture on steroids. It is an obsession with justice through the lens of neo Marxism. And neo Marxism does not believe in the American system of justice, in the American ideas of individual liberties. It does not believe in the biblical values of what is right and wrong. The Bible says, that the Lord abhors unequal weights and measures. You are not supposed to treat the poor any different than you treat the rich under the law, right? You're not supposed, and you can extrapolate that to anything you want to. You shouldn't be treating under the law a man different than a woman, a white person different than a black person, this and the other. But that is not what neo Marxism does. Neo Marxism says, yes, you treat everybody differently, not because we're trying to have equality under the law, but because we're trying to reach equal outcomes. And I'll tell you what, men, if men are making more money than women, then we have to discriminate against men to make sure that women get more. You do that with racial groups, you do that with sexual identity categories, you do it with everything. And what you end up with is what they call justice, but it's actually injustice. That's why we're woke.
What so I'm going to ask you a very simple question and I'm going to let you, go for it on this because I think a lot of people are feeling like you're kind of like, in a movie when somebody goes over the cliff and they're holding on to like the one branch that's on the edge of the mountain, right? And it feels that way right now in culture. Do you think it's too late for America to turn back?
I don't think it's too late for this reason and this reason only. I believe in the Bible, and I know not everybody reading does. I believe in the Bible. And God says, if my people will repent, I will heal their land. I still believe that that's possible. I believe that God can do anything. And I believe that the truth can set people free. And I believe that we at one point had a country where the truth in a certain, albeit diluted form, was in our laws and our moral codes and our taboos. I just saw, like, for instance, I saw something for this. We just had Halloween, and there, I don't know if you saw, but there was a house down in Louisiana. Part of their haunted house depiction on their garage was Jesus on a cross, decapitated, and above him was the devil holding a severed Jesus head and all these demons that were like killing priests and killing nuns and blood everywhere. A gruesome, blasphemous display of the Lord Jesus Christ that even people who aren't Christians used to be like, hey, we taboo that. We don't do that in the neighborhood. We don't do that in our city. That's not something we want to do. That used to be tabooed, right? Well, not anymore. And so I believe that a country that honors God will be blessed. And I don't think it's too late because of that. But it is not alarmist to say, in my opinion, that we have already gone off that cliff. And I do not think that most Americans understand the consequences of what happens when this car actually hits the bottom. The loss of individual liberties cannot be exaggerated. Look, if the government can shut you down and put you in your home for months at a time, then they can do it for years at a time. If they can shut your church down indefinitely, well, that means that even if they let your church open up, they can tell your church what you can and cannot say. If government is in league with big tech, as we now know that it was, and the Biden administration or whoever's administration can go to these big tech allies and say, hey, we want to start an unholy alliance of some sort of autocracy or something like that. We're going to come to you and start an unholy alliance where the power of the state is going to work through big tech or big corporation, big business, to clamp down on a group of people. Well, now you don't have freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of religion, and this, that, and the other. And I'll say this for anybody listening that says, John, you're talking so much Christian stuff. There's separation of church and state. I just want people to know where we are headed. There is no separation between church and state right now because an unholy church is actually running our lives. And if you don't believe me, right now we have blasphemy laws in this country. I've been saying that recently. People say, blasphemy laws? No, we don't. There used to be blasphemy laws, like, if you use the Lord's name in vain in public, there would be a consequence. You can't do that. Well, we have blasphemy laws, don't we, right now? If you say a man cannot have a period, you might lose your job. If you say my 10-year-old son who identifies as a girl is not a girl, and I do not affirm it, and I will not change his name, well, you just might have a penalty against you coming real soon, depending on your situation. We've seen this. That's happened in Canada. Canada's already gone. They've gone off the cliff. They've already hit the bottom. America isn't that far behind. We already have blasphemy laws. If you go on as a business and say, I do not support the LGBT pride, authoritarianism and the pride parades coming through my city, where you have grown men nearly naked on all fours being walked through the park, and that I'm talking about in public, we don't support that. I don't want drag queen story hour at my the public library. Well, that's almost a blasphemy. You're almost committing blasphemy. There is going to be, you may lose your job. There's going to be something that happens against you. So we are headed off the cliff. I think we've already gone off the cliff. We haven't hit the bottom yet, but I'll tell you what, it's coming.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I said maybe we're holding on to the one branch, but maybe we've already lost the branch and we just need to pull the parachute, right? Like we just need to pull the parachute to save ourselves. We're on our way down. Canada's already on the ground. We're almost there.
Mm.
But you address all of this in the book, Wimpy, Weak, and Woke. Where can people go get this book and get armed with the information they need to navigate it all?
Let's see, it's johnlcooper.com. That's my website. Go to johnlcooper.com and get it. I do believe it's up on Amazon now, as well. The audiobook is maybe released next year. We haven't done it yet, but probably will in about a year. And I will just tell people, I know it sounds like we've had a lot of pessimism, a lot of dark stuff, but the book is actually optimistic. I, of course, go off on these things. I say this is the reason we're heading this bad place, but we end with a positive vision of returning. It's a return to the past. It's a return to these principles of Judeo Christian ethics that built Western civilization. And no, you don't have to be a Christian to recognize, you don't have to be religious to recognize that it's a pretty dang good civilization we built. And we need to go back to those principles: family, community, absolute truth, absolute reality, absolute morality. There is such a thing as right and wrong. And guess what? Individual liberties, these things that we've taken for granted for so long that are being taken away, those are worth fighting and worth bleeding for. If you are a religious person, I think that you will really appreciate how much I talk about the difference between ancient literature from the Bible, the wisdom of the Bible, and those who have come before us versus what I call the anti wisdom of the progressives. I mean, these people are saying they might sound like good ideas, but they are not. And we are now we're seeing the terrible results of these horrible ideas that they think are really good because they want to build utopia. But remember this: utopia always ends in dystopia every single time. So I hope you check out the book.
Well, I hope people grab the book and also that we pull the parachute so that we can get things back on track. John Cooper, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Billy.